or ladies and gentlemen, and anyone who's ever had their heart break and their confidence shaken, no contact is a good first step. It cuts the noise, or it slows the replay of the past. It gives you space. But I'm here to tell you no contact alone is not enough. If you stop at silence, or you'll only trade a familiar loop for an empty one. Real recovery, real victory is not about proving something to someone else. It's about rebuilding, rising, and refusing to let your life be defined by what happened to you. Silence is a powerful weapon, but it becomes empty when it is not backed by progress. Or many people believe that no contact alone will shift the balance, yet what actually shifts power is the growth that takes place during the silence. If you remain stagnant, or the absence of contact simply fades into background noise and the other person eventually feels nothing, the truth is, silence without transformation is hollow. Or, to make silence meaningful, you must fill that space with growth that is both visible and undeniable, concluding that silence is only as strong as the growth behind it. Or, when you choose no contact, you are creating a void. That void can either expose your weakness or highlight your strength depending on how you use it. Or, if you spend that time dwelling in pain, waiting for them to notice, the silence works against you. But if you devote that silence to becoming stronger, healthier, and more confident, it transforms into an echo that speaks louder than any words. The conclusion is simple: silence itself does not carry power, but growth within silence creates the power. Growth during silence is more than a surface level change. It is not about showing off, but about transforming yourself from the inside out. If you grow intellectually, emotionally, financially, and physically, people around you will naturally notice the difference. Or the one who underestimated you will sense that shift, even without a word spoken. No contact gives you the room to do this without interference. Or the conclusion here is that internal transformation during silence creates external results that cannot be ignored. Or physical growth is one of the most obvious transformations during silence. Improving your body health and energy sends an unspoken message of discipline and self-respect. Or if you dedicate yourself to fitness, grooming, and presentation, silence becomes more than avoidance. It becomes a showcase of transformation. Others see it, and the person who once took you for granted is forced to reevaluate. Or the conclusion is that physical growth during silence forces undeniable recognition of your evolving strength and presence. Emotional growth, though less visible, is even more powerful. If you use silence to master your emotions, the other person will sense your detachment without you even trying. Or they will notice that your reactions are no longer tied to them and that you have cultivated a calm indifference. Or this kind of growth crushes ego more effectively than anger or revenge. Emotional control shows maturity and power, proving that you cannot be manipulated anymore. Or the conclusion is that emotional growth during silence creates a shield that ego cannot penetrate. Financial and personal success are equally important during no contact. Or when you focus on building your career, income, and independence, silence gains a new meaning. Or it is not that you refuse to speak. It is that you are too busy creating results to waste time. Success amplifies silence, making it deafening. Or the one who once believed they were your world now realizes they are only a small part of it. The conclusion is that financial growth adds weight to silence, turning it into undeniable proof of progress. Intellectual growth is often overlooked, but it is vital. Reading, learning new skills, and expanding your mind makes you more valuable to yourself and to others. Silence without mental growth risks leaving you stuck in old patterns. Or silence with continuous learning makes you unpredictable and exciting. The more you know, the more confident and secure you become. Eventually, your silence represents wisdom instead of emptiness. The conclusion is that intellectual growth ensures your silence speaks as authority rather than absence. Or spiritual or self-awareness growth also plays a deep role during no contact. Reflecting, meditating, and connecting with higher values makes you peaceful and unshakable. Or instead of silence being a strategy, it becomes a natural state of inner strength. the other person senses that you have found grounding within yourself, or, and that is the hardest thing to shake, ego thrives when it believes it has power, but spiritual growth removes that leverage. Or, the conclusion is that self-awareness transforms silence into a living proof of unshakable strength. Ultimately, silence without growth is just distance, but silence with growth becomes undeniable impact. The goal is not to hide and wait for someone to notice, but to build so much that silence itself becomes a statement. Or when growth pairs with no contact, the other person is forced to confront a new reality where you thrive without them. Or that realization crushes ego more effectively than words ever could. The conclusion is that silence gains true power only when it is paired with constant, undeniable growth. Or when a relationship ends, many people struggle because their identity was wrapped around the other person. Who you were became defined by her presence, approval, and attention. But when she leaves, it feels like you lose not just her, but yourself. That is why no contact alone is not enough. It creates space, but it does not give you back your identity. Or the only way forward is to rebuild yourself without her influence. Or the conclusion is that reclaiming your sense of self is the foundation of crushing the dependence that once held you captive. Or rebuilding identity starts with recognizing what parts of you were neglected in the relationship. Maybe you stopped pursuing hobbies, ignored friendships, or abandoned personal goals because you were too invested in keeping her happy. Now is the time to resurrect those parts of yourself, or pick up the things that made you feel alive before she entered your life. By restoring those pieces, you begin to rediscover who you are without her shadow. Or the conclusion is that reclaiming lost passions strengthens your identity and diminishes her importance in your story. Or a new identity also requires courage to try what you've never tried before, step into new experiences, whether it's travel, fitness challenges, or creative projects. Or these activities rewire your self-image and prove that you are capable of growth without her. She may have once believed she knew everything about you, but each new pursuit makes you a stranger to her memory. The more unrecognizable you become, the more her ego is shaken. Or the conclusion is that exploring new paths builds an identity that makes the past version of you irrelevant. Rebuilding identity also demands a shift in self-perception. Or stop seeing yourself as someone who was left abandoned or underestimated. Instead, view yourself as someone who was freed to become greater. Or identity is not built by clinging to rejection, but by redefining the story. You are not the man who lost a relationship. You are the man who gained freedom to evolve. Or by claiming this narrative, you rise above bitterness. The conclusion is that identity comes from reframing your story in a way that empowers you instead of weakens you. Or your environment plays a role in shaping your identity. If you keep the same routines, places, and circles, it will be easy to slip back into old habits tied to her. Or changing your environment, whether through new friends, new routines, or new places, breaks the cycle. When she sees that your life no longer revolves around familiar patterns, or it sends a clear message that you are building a world where she no longer exists. Or the conclusion is that reshaping your environment ensures your identity is rebuilt without her influence lingering. Identity also comes from the values you choose to live by. Or in the past, you may have compromised your principles to maintain peace or keep her close. Now is the time to decide what truly matters to you. Honor, discipline, ambition, or creativity. Living by values creates a stronger sense of self than any relationship can offer. Values outlast emotions and connections, and they define who you are at your core. The conclusion is that grounding yourself in values builds an identity that cannot be shaken by anyone's departure. Or rebuilding your identity without her also means expanding your social connections. The more you surround yourself with people who reflect the new version of you, or the more your identity becomes reinforced. Old ties may pull you back into old roles, but new people will hold you accountable to your growth. Or strong friendships and networks redefine your status and remind you that you are more than one relationship. Or the conclusion is that surrounding yourself with supportive people strengthens your new identity and erases her role in validating you. Or a new identity must also include self-reliance. When you stop depending on someone else for emotional validation, financial support, or a sense of purpose, or you become unstoppable. She may have once believed that you needed her to feel complete, but independence disproves that belief. By becoming self-sufficient, or you send the strongest message possible that your worth is not tied to her presence. Independence makes you magnetic and untouchable. Or the conclusion is that self-reliance is the ultimate proof that you have rebuilt an identity free from her control. Ultimately, or rebuilding your identity without her is not about revenge, but about liberation. You rise when you stop asking how she sees you and start deciding how you see yourself. Or you become powerful when your life is filled with goals, values, and growth that make her presence irrelevant. The irony is that when you no longer need her for identity, or she is forced to notice the man you've become, the conclusion is that identity rebuilt without her becomes the loudest silence, or proving you have outgrown what once defined you. Emotional control is the most powerful weapon in reclaiming your strength after a breakup. Most people lose themselves in anger or sadness or desperate attempts to seek validation, but these reactions only empower the other person. When you are visibly shaken, you prove that their actions still control you. Or true strength is not loud rage or forced indifference, but calm mastery of your emotions. When you reach the point where you no longer react to their presence, silence, or words, or you prove yourself unshakable. The conclusion is that emotional control shows you cannot be ruled by another's actions. When you master emotional control, or you deny her the satisfaction of seeing you broken. Ego thrives when it believes it has left a mark, but when your demeanor remains calm and consistent, or her confidence in her power begins to collapse. Even if she tries to provoke you, she sees no reaction, only composure. This unsettles her more than anger or begging ever could, or your control forces her to question her influence. The conclusion is that by maintaining composure, you take away the ego's fuel and turn silence into a weapon. Or emotional control also means learning how to respond internally to triggers. Memories, old conversations, or seeing her move on can easily stir powerful feelings. But instead of letting those emotions dictate your behavior, you acknowledge them without action. Breathing, journaling, or redirecting your energy helps you release what would otherwise consume you. She expects you to falter under pressure, but your restraint proves otherwise. Or when feelings rise, but you stay in control, you show true strength. The conclusion is that controlling inner responses weakens the grip of her influence over you. Or indifference is often misunderstood as pretending not to care, but true indifference is a product of emotional control. Or it is not about acting cold while secretly obsessing. It is about genuinely reaching a state where her choices no longer dictate your mood. Or achieving this takes discipline and patience, but once you embody it, you become untouchable. She can no longer manipulate you through silence, attention, or withdrawal. Or real indifference makes you immune to her ego games. The conclusion is that genuine indifference comes from emotional mastery, not pretense or forced detachment. Or one of the hardest tests of emotional control is social media. Many people break no contact by posting in ways meant to provoke, or by obsessing over what she shares, but true mastery is staying calm, unaffected, and uninterested. By refusing to engage or react online, you starve her ego of the attention it craves. Every ignored post, or every absence of response becomes louder than words. Over time, your digital silence reflects inner peace. Or the conclusion is that controlling your impulses on social media proves you no longer operate under her influence. Emotional control extends into how you treat yourself. Or if you let emotions dictate destructive behaviors like overdrinking, overeating, or reckless decisions, you give away your power. But when you channel emotions into productive habits, fitness, learning, work, you prove that feelings do not rule you, you rule them. Or this shift changes your identity and builds resilience that lasts beyond this breakup. Growth fueled by discipline is impossible to ignore. Or the conclusion is that directing emotions towards self-improvement transforms pain into power and solidifies your control over your own life. Or another key part of emotional mastery is communication, or the lack of it. When you resist the urge to send long messages, argue, or seek closure, or you prove you have risen above emotional weakness. Every moment you choose silence over reaction, you gain strength. Or she begins to realize that her words no longer hold sway over you, and this forces her to question her importance. Or silence backed by composure carries more weight than endless explanations. Or the conclusion is that restraint in communication highlights your strength and destabilizes her ego-driven expectations. Or emotional control does not mean suppressing feelings but mastering them. Suppression eventually explodes, while mastery allows release without destruction. Or you can acknowledge sadness, anger, or longing without letting them guide your actions. This balance creates inner freedom, or because you no longer fear your emotions nor let them run wild. In turn, she senses that her absence or presence has no power over your state of mind, or that realization cuts deeper than confrontation. The conclusion is that true mastery means owning emotions without being owned by them, creating unshakable inner strength. Or ultimately, mastering emotional control is the highest form of reclaiming power. It is not about hurting her or seeking validation, but about proving to yourself that you are unmovable. Anger fades, sadness heals, but discipline in emotions builds lifelong resilience. Or when she realizes that her ego can no longer dictate your reactions, her sense of control collapses. Or the one who remains calm while others lose themselves is always the strongest. The conclusion is that emotional mastery turns silence into strength, and strength into the ultimate form of victory. Silence alone does not leave an impact unless it is filled with action. Or living a life that makes silence loud means building such momentum that your absence speaks volumes. When she no longer hears from you, or the only way she notices you is through the undeniable progress you display in your life, achievements, transformations, and new opportunities amplify the silence. Or, instead of wondering why you haven't called, she begins to wonder how you became so unstoppable without her. Or, the conclusion is that silence backed by progress makes absence impossible to ignore. A loud silence is created by accomplishments that speak for themselves. Or advancing in your career, starting a new business, or excelling in studies shows that you are not frozen in the past. Or success radiates beyond words and forces others to recognize your growth. When she hears about your achievements, her ego is shaken because she expected you to remain stuck. Or every milestone becomes a reminder that you thrive in her absence. The conclusion is that tangible success turns silence into an echo that cannot be silenced by indifference. Or social presence also makes silence loud. When you invest in building new connections, attending events, or surrounding yourself with valuable people, or your absence in her life contrasts with your presence everywhere else. Photos of you enjoying experiences, traveling, or bonding with new friends create a narrative of progress. Or she sees a version of you she no longer has access to, and that realization stings. Or the conclusion is that expanding your social world ensures your silence echoes with undeniable visibility and power. Personal transformation is another way silence speaks. Or if you reinvent your appearance, develop a new style, or improve your health, you become unrecognizable compared to the person she left behind. She thought she knew you fully, but your growth surprises her. That shock challenges her ego because it proves you are evolving without her. Transformation is louder than any words of anger or regret. Or the conclusion is that personal reinvention during silence magnifies your absence by making your growth impossible to ignore. Or adventures and new experiences add depth to your silence. When you engage in activities that push your limits, such as traveling to new places, learning new skills, or embracing challenges, your life becomes a story she is no longer part of. Each new chapter highlights her absence and makes her realize she is missing out. Or silence is no longer emptiness, it is filled with experiences that speak louder than contact ever could. Or the conclusion is that living adventurously turns silence into a narrative that constantly reminds her of your growth. confidence is perhaps the loudest expression of silence. Or when you walk, speak, and live with assurance, the world notices. Confidence cannot be faked for long. It comes from discipline, growth, and self-belief. Or if she encounters you again or hears about you, your confidence becomes impossible to deny. She expected you to crumble, but your strength sends a message louder than words, or you have outgrown the past. The conclusion is that silence backed by visible confidence crushes ego more than confrontation or explanation ever could, or contribution to others also amplifies your silence. When you give back to your community, support friends, or mentor others, you shift the narrative from loss to impact, or your life becomes bigger than personal relationships, and she sees you creating value in places she cannot touch. Or this shift elevates your purpose and makes your silence profound. By investing in others, you build a legacy that speaks volumes. Or the conclusion is that using silence to create impact on others turns absence into inspiration and undeniable strength. Consistency is what makes your silence powerful long term. Or short bursts of progress fade if you return to old habits. But when you consistently work on yourself, the results accumulate into undeniable change. Or she may dismiss your initial growth as temporary, but persistence proves otherwise. Every month that passes without contact, but with progress, builds a louder message. Or silence becomes permanent evidence of evolution. Or the conclusion is that consistency transforms silence from a momentary tactic into a lifelong statement of strength and independence. In the end, or living a life that makes silence loud is not about revenge. It is about self-respect. The goal is not to prove her wrong, but to prove yourself right. Or when you thrive in every area, silence becomes unnecessary words that echo louder than confrontation. Your progress forces her to acknowledge what she lost, or even if she never admits it. The real victory is not her recognition, but your transformation. Or the conclusion is that a life filled with growth and success turns silence into the loudest answer possible.